Am I the asshole for filing for divorce because my husband over-tightens all of the jar lids? His over-tightening jar lids has been an issue since he was just visiting at my house when we were dating. First, it started with just things he used, and then over time, it became every damn glass jar with a metal lid. He would tighten them so much, I couldn't open them without assistance. It wasn't a huge deal if he was there, but if I was alone, it was so annoying. More times than I can count, I've opened a new jar of something because I just couldn't get the jar open. It's been a recurring cycle over the past 5 years. It's just a thing that would escalate until I had a major meltdown and freaked out, screaming, frustrated, and seemingly crazy because it's just a jar lid. Then it would get better for a while, then it would slowly become an issue again, just getting worse and worse until I reach a breaking point again. Sometimes I literally feel insane for being so upset over jar lids. He initially claimed that he did it to, quote, keep food fresh. After many arguments about it and my insistence that I don't believe it keeps anything fresh, and even if it does make things last longer, I don't care if it means I can't eat my freaking food when I want. I'll just replace things that go bad because they are closed normally. Then the excuse was that it's just a habit of his. So about a month ago, my husband had a family emergency and had to travel out of state for 10 days. First day he's gone, I discover a jar I can't open. I was annoyed and was going to go to the store to buy new pickles when the neighbor said hi and to let me know if I needed anything while, oh my God, she goes soon to be ex, already calling him ex, already calling him an ex, is out of town. I said, wait here, and got the jar, which he opened. The next day, I saw him outside and asked him to open another jar. He offered to come open all the jars. I agreed, and he came in, and he went to the fridge and opened all the jars except 2, which he couldn't even get open. I thanked him profusely and told him I'd bake some of his favorite cookies later in the week. He laughed and said it was no big deal, and after confirming that I wouldn't be upset if the remaining 2 jars were destroyed in his attempt to open them, he took them home to his garage to open them one way or another. He said that he's heard me screaming about over-tightened jar lids a few times over the years, and he's really pondered if I was crazy or if my husband really was over-tightening the jar lids. He said, you know, this was probably intentional. It was every jar, and I'm sure my ex doesn't regularly use hot pepper paste or mango puree or any of the other fancy cooking stuff. Then he held up the 2 jars he couldn't open and said, I don't know why he's doing it, but it wasn't an accident. After he left, I locked the door and sat on my kitchen floor and cried. Then I felt hot and lightheaded. I vomited in the trash can. My chest hurt. It crossed my mind that I might be having a heart attack. I thought about calling an ambulance, but sat back down on my kitchen floor instead, okay with just dying if it was a heart attack. Later, the neighbor came back with the open jar of hot fudge and apologized that he couldn't save the figs. He said he broke the jar trying to get it open. He also apologized for what he said about my husband doing it on purpose. I assured him it was okay. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned all night. I called out of work. By 10 a.m., I realized that I couldn't stay married anymore, and I made an appointment with a lawyer the next day. There are literally no other issues. No cheating, no abuse. We had a good sex life. Both have good jobs, nice house, no financial issues. He was absolutely blindsided when he came home and I told him I wanted a divorce. He still won't admit that he tightened the jars on purpose. He suggested we go to marriage counseling, but I refused. There is no point. I just literally can't get past the goddamn jar lids. I still feel a bit crazy about that. I have no idea why he would tighten every jar lid so tightly that I couldn't open it. He has given me no reason. He still won't even admit that he did it on purpose. But the hot pepper paste is in the back of the fridge. I use it only when I make Indian food. It's behind other things. He has never used it. It's nothing you could put in food without cooking it. The pepper paste could not have been an accident. It just couldn't. Maybe he put mango puree on his toast or in his oatmeal, but the pepper paste couldn't have been an accident. That's what my life comes down to. I'm getting a divorce because the lid to my hot pepper paste was over-tightened. If it had been every jar except that one, then I could try. I could have had a sliver of doubt. I could do something else, but I just can't get past the hot pepper paste. Most of our friends and families either think I'm crazy or an asshole.
Am I wrong for reporting my boss after he forced me to attend a meeting despite knowing I was in labor? I, 28 female, have been working at my company for 5 years, and until recently, I loved my job. I was 8 months pregnant when this happened, about a month ago, so I started having contractions while at work. Since I was not due yet, I thought it was just Braxton Hicks because they weren't that intense. Just a week before that, I had experienced Braxton Hicks and went to the hospital, but it was a false alarm. This time, I was still working when the contractions started in the morning, and I again thought it was Braxton Hicks. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I tried to keep working. Last time I went to the hospital, my boss, John, 45 male, made sarcastic comments about me being overly dramatic and joked about how I should schedule my labor around important meetings. I have social anxiety and tend to take people's crap without pushing back, so I just took it. I knew the contractions were getting stronger and closer together. I knew it was real labor. I needed to go to the hospital. I informed John that I was in labor and needed to leave. He rolled his eyes and said, "Just stay for the meeting at 1 p.m. It's crucial and we need you there." I was stunned. I reiterated that I was in active labor and needed to go to the hospital immediately. John snapped back. "It's just a meeting. Sit through it and then you can go. It's not like the baby is going to pop out right now." Feeling pressured and scared for my job, I reluctantly stayed. The meeting lasted an excruciating 2 hours. By the end of it, I was in so much pain that I could barely walk. I finally left and drove myself to the hospital, where I was admitted immediately. My husband reached 30 to 40 minutes later because he was on the other side of a town for a meeting. My daughter was born later that evening, thankfully healthy despite the delay. When I told my husband what had happened, he was furious and insisted we report John to HR. I was hesitant because I didn't want to jeopardize my job, but I agreed it was the right thing to do. HR was appalled and assured me they would handle the situation. John has since been suspended pending an investigation. The real kicker? During the investigation, it came out that John had emailed the entire office while I was in labor complaining about my lack of commitment and making fun of me for overreacting. He even implied that I was using my pregnancy as an excuse to get out of work. Now my coworkers are pissed at me saying I overreacted and that I should have just sucked it up for the sake of the company. I've even received messages and emails from a few colleagues saying that I've ruined John's career and that he was just doing his job under pressure. One even said that I should have toughed it out like their wife did during her pregnancy. The stress from this whole ordeal has made it difficult to enjoy my first few days with my newborn. I'm constantly second-guessing myself and feeling guilty, despite knowing I did what was best for my baby and me. To make matters worse, the interim manager who took over from John is even worse. He's made it clear to everyone that he resents my action and has made my return to work unbearable. Now that my maternity leave is over, I find myself isolated at work. People give me side eyes and whisper about me. During lunch, I'm alone because no one wants to sit with the troublemaker. It feels like high school all over again. I dread going into work every day and facing the hostility and judgment. I never imagined that doing what was right for my health and my baby's well-being would turn my colleagues against me like this. It's gut-wrenching to feel so isolated and vilified for simply standing up for myself and my rights. I cry most of the time when I come home and sometimes even in the office washroom when someone passes a comment. In the worst moments, I get mad at my husband and blame him for making me tell HR. And even though I know he did the right thing, he's so sweet and never takes it to heart. I apologize soon after, but he always says he wasn't even mad and that he understands how I'm feeling, especially since I'm just 1 month postpartum. He says I should take action and complain, but I don't want to make things worse. He's also saying he can't see me like this and that I should just quit because it's hurting him. I don't know what to do. I'm just such a sensitive and emotional person in general, and now it's been worse since giving birth. Am I the asshole for reporting my boss after he forced me to attend a meeting despite knowing I was in labor?
Mother-in-law taught my daughter to lie. My 39 male mother-in-law has taught my daughter to lie. Attempts to talk this out with her have gone completely sideways. My wife, 39 female, is pregnant. She doesn't need the stress, and I could use tips on how to handle this. Please fire away. A few months ago, I noticed that my 5-year-old daughter started asking me not to tell her mom about treats she got at my mother-in-law's house. When I picked her up, she'd whisper that mother-in-law gave her donuts and ice cream with no actual food, just sweets. I discussed this with my wife, and we initially thought it was a one-time thing, but it kept happening several times a week. On the way home, my daughter would tell me that Granny gave her a treat and asked her to keep it a secret. After the third or fourth time, I directly spoke to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. I explained that my daughter needs real food, not just sugar, and that these treats make bedtime difficult because she's too hyped up. I also mentioned that asking our daughter to keep secrets from her mother is unacceptable, as it sets a bad precedent. I thought this would resolve the issue, but unfortunately, it didn't. As far as I could tell, they just told me what I wanted to hear. About a month ago, the situation escalated beyond treats. My mother-in-law's habit of encouraging my daughter to keep secrets has led to other concerning behaviors. 1, my daughter now does things she knows are wrong and asks one parent not to tell the other. She spoke to a stranger in our yard and asked him not to tell me. 3, she's also started asking random people we meet to keep secrets from us. This is dangerous for obvious reasons, but the gravity of the situation seems lost on my mother-in-law. We've tried discussing it with her twice, but both attempts have failed. My wife has taken the lead because it's her mother, and I'm trying to stay calm. I have a strong protective instinct when it comes to my daughter, and if I get involved, things will escalate quickly. My wife is the caring one. I'm more like the nuke option. The first conversation with my wife and my mother-in-law ended in tears and silence. Mother-in-law refused to acknowledge that she had done anything wrong, despite our daughter telling us that Granny asked her to keep secrets. Mother-in-law deflected, blaming TV, school, or something we had shown her instead. Next, they sent us a message stating that they were going to come to our house, sit us down, and send our daughter off with the relatives so they could talk to us about this. Guys, I don't know how it works in your house, but in this house, nobody calls the shots but us. I wouldn't have agreed to that anyway, but the meeting was postponed because we had COVID. When we informed them, my mother-in-law accused my wife of lying, literally called her a liar. If I hadn't been so sick, I would have lost my temper over that. It's incredibly rude and disrespectful. The second conversation was even worse. After a couple of weeks of no contact, my in-laws called to talk things out. My wife engaged, wanting to meet face-to-face and record the conversation because mother-in-law had a history of forgetting things that make her look bad. They refused to allow her to record, so she tried to resolve it over the phone. During 75% of the call, mother-in-law denied ever asking our daughter to keep secrets. Then she claimed she heard our daughter say it, but didn't think it was important enough to mention. This was a huge red flag for me. Eventually, mother-in-law admitted to it, but quickly pivoted to demanding forgiveness, saying, "But you have to forgive me. I'm her grandma. You're an unforgiving person if you don't." This was pure manipulation. Either my wife forgives her and rug sweeps, or she's labeled unforgiving. Mother-in-law then topped it off by comparing my wife to a family member she despises and has bad-mouthed for years. My wife left that combo in hysterics, sobbing. So here we are. My pregnant wife is stressed out, which isn't good for our unborn child. We've had several serious talks with our daughter about the issues this has caused, discussions about keeping secrets, the difference between food and treats, and the importance of trust. We're talking constantly. I want my daughter to have a good relationship with the family, but this issue needs to be addressed. I'm struggling to keep my cool and not come in hot.
She was the only little girl missing in the area. Her family is walking around the fields trying to find her, and all they see are body parts upon body parts and more and more. Today's case does involve the death of a young child, so please, as always, take care of yourselves. If this is going to hurt your mental health or ruin your day in any way, please just don't listen to this. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in my next video. Fanny Adams was the cutest little girl. She lived in Hampshire, England with her mother Harriet and her father George. She was the fourth youngest out of 6 children. Fanny was only 8 years old when her life was taken. She was described as an outgoing, intelligent, cheerful little girl. And she had a best friend. Her name was Minnie Warner, who lived in the same neighborhood. The two of them did absolutely everything together. August 24th of 1867, it was a hot, beautiful summer day. Fanny, along with one of her little sisters and her best friend Minnie, were playing outside right by their house. Really close to their neighborhood was an open fielded area that they commonly referred to as the flood meadow. Children from the neighborhood often went to that area to go and play outside. It was known to be a pretty safe and secure area. The girls asked Fanny's mother if they could go to Flood Meadow and play. And because the girls had completed all of their chores and done all of the housework, Fanny's mother agreed. On their walk there, the girls decided to take a shortcut through one of the fields, which is when they ran into 29-year-old Frederick Baker. Frederick was new-ish to town. He had lived there for 2 months. He had moved from Guilford to work. And he wasn't really a complete stranger to the girls. They attended the same church, so they knew his face. They had seen each other around before. He was talking to the girls for around an hour. They continued playing. He was picking blackberries from the field, and they were eating them together. They were playing. Frederick was watching them, which is creepy in itself. Fanny's little sister, Lizzie, and her best friend, Millie, decided that they were tired and they wanted to go back home. But Frederick, he did not want them to leave. He did not want them to go. So he offered Lizzie and Millie 3 coins for them to go away and go buy some candy. And then he offered Fanny 1 coin to go on a walk with him, but Fanny didn't want to. Instead of trying to manipulate Fanny and trick her into going on a walk with him, Frederick just picked her up and walked away with her in his arms, carried her away while Lizzie and Millie were just watching it happen, and they watched them disappear together. Lizzie and Millie immediately run back towards the neighborhood, and they stop at Millie's house to tell the mother what just happened, that this older man took Fanny away from them in front of their very eyes. However, Millie's mother didn't seem to think that it was a big deal at all. For whatever reason, she was not concerned really. I guess guess reason being that it was the 1860s. The world back then was not like the world is now. Things like that did not happen, especially in that town. They didn't have to worry about murder and crime and kidnapping and abductions the way that we do now because it just didn't happen back then. Millie was also 8 years old at that time and Lizzie was only 5, so when they told the mother and she wasn't worried, they saw the mom not really reacting and the girls thought, well, I guess it's not that big of a deal. If the mother isn't worried, then we shouldn't be worried either. So the girls just continued to play at Millie's house, leaving no one worried for Fanny, let alone no one looking for Fanny. Around 5 p.m. that night, 5-year-old Lizzie starts making her way back home. She gets home and the mother realizes that she's back alone. Fanny isn't with her. Lizzie was asked where her sister was and she explained to her mom that when they were playing in the field, this man came up to them and just took Fanny. Immediately, the mom, Harriet, goes into panic mode. She runs over to the neighbor's house, Mrs. Gardner, and both women, along with Lizzie, start looking for Fanny. They're walking around the area and towards Flood Meadow when they run into Frederick Baker, and he was alone. Mrs. Gardner asked Frederick where Fanny was, and he told them that he has no idea, that he did see the girls earlier that day, but that he just gave them coins and money to go buy candy with, and he didn't know where Fanny was. She was probably maybe still buying candy out somewhere by herself. Frederick was known to be somewhat of a trusted good man in the community, so I guess when the women saw him, they saw that Fanny was not with him, and he gave somewhat of a reasonable explanation, I guess, not really. But that left the women feeling kind of stuck. They didn't really know what else to do, so they ended up just going back home. A group of neighbors got together along with Fanny's mother, and they kept their little search party going. Thomas Gates was a retired veteran who was now doing some labor work in the area, and that day he had worked in town. He was making his way back home. He was walking home, and he decided to take a shortcut through one of the fields. And what he ran into was vile. Thomas saw a human head stuck in between two poles. The head was missing an ear, and it had a smile-shaped incision from the mouth all the way back to both ears. Kind of looked like a Joker smile shape almost. When Fanny's mom heard what had been found, her heart shattered. There was only one missing person in the area, and it was her 8-year-old daughter. And now a head has been found exactly where her daughter went missing. That head was confirmed to be that of Fanny Adams. Her mother, Harriet, started running to town. She was going to go find her husband George and let him know what had just been found, but understandingly so, she was overwhelmed with emotions, having just found out the worst news she could have possibly ever received, and when she was running back, she just collapsed, frozen in fear and shocked with painful heartbreak. When George, Fanny's father, eventually did hear the news, he rushed home. The neighbors were able to calm him down somewhat before he set off, and police were now brought into the investigation as well. By that next morning, hundreds of volunteers and people from town had gathered with police to search for the rest of Fanny's remains. In that field and in surrounding areas, pieces of Fanny's clothing were found scattered around. It did not take long for people to start running into and finding different body parts all scattered across the field. They were able to recover her torso, which had been absolutely ripped apart in the most morbid way possible. They found parts of her legs and arms. Her feet were recovered nearby as well. Her heart was found alone, and her eyeballs were found floating in a nearby river. An incredibly gruesome scene. I can't even begin to imagine what her family and her parents must have been thinking. It makes my stomach sink and it breaks my heart. That is horrid. A witness also came forward and said that minutes after Fanny was taken, he himself saw Frederick Baker in the fields close to that river, and it seemed like he was trying to clean something off and cleaning blood off of his clothing. His hands were absolutely covered and soaked with blood. The remains were taken into police custody, and the cause of death was ruled as blunt force trauma to the head. William Cheney was the police superintendent, and he was a big part that took lead over the case. They already had a name of their suspect, a man who abducted Fanny Adams in front of her best friend and her little sister. There was really no mystery to solve. They knew who was responsible for this crime, so soon after, closer to 9 p.m., William, along with other officers, went down to Frederick's place of work to arrest him. Frederick was still there. They arrested him and took him back to the station for questioning. When they searched his person, on him he was carrying 2 knives, which were believed to be the murder weapon. But even after finding that on him, Frederick maintained his innocence, saying that he had absolutely nothing to do with this. Blood stains were found on Frederick's clothing. It seemed like he had done a very poor job of cleaning the blood off of his clothing. When he was asked about the blood on his clothes, about the knives that he had, and about Fanny Adams, Frederick said, quote, "Well, I don't see a scratch or cuts on my hand to account for the blood," still holding on to the fact that he was claiming to be innocent. When authorities searched Frederick's house and further searched his place of work, they found his diary. And in his diary was honestly the only evidence that they needed. Frederick had written in his diary, with the day dated, an entry that said, quote, "Killed a young girl today. It was fine and hot End quote. I'm sorry, what? Frederick was charged with the murder of Fanny Adams. He was held in police custody until his trial in December 5th of 1867. It only took the jury 15 minutes to deliberate and find Frederick Baker guilty. He was sentenced to death and died December 24th of 1869. Absolutely insane. There was not that many details on this case simply for the fact that it was so long ago. Also, not many pictures again because it was in the 1860s, but heartbreaking nonetheless and absolutely unbelievable. I also have so many questions because one, why did he do that? But two, why did he do that and scatter body parts all over the fields and then just go back to his place of work? Like, what? I don't understand. That's evil and disgusting, and the fact that he wrote about it in his diary is also so weird and gross and sad. But
am I overreacting? My husband went to a bachelor party where escorts stayed at the villa. Last weekend, my 35 female, husband 38 male went to a bachelor party in Cancun. The best man booked a private villa that is out of the main city and pretty secluded, but it's fully staffed, right on the water, and has plenty of rooms for everyone in their small group to have their own. My husband didn't really want to go because we've been so busy with work and other trips this summer. He told the groom and the best man that he was out, but they were adamant about him going, said they couldn't imagine it without him. So the best man bought my husband a non-refundable plane ticket and basically said that he wasn't taking no for an answer. My intuition was screaming that something about this wasn't on the up and up. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just had this yucky feeling in my gut. The week of, the best man sends out an itinerary which includes dress attire details. Stuff like, bring your best swim trunks like you're dressing to impress at a Vegas pool party, and plan themed nights such as Black Light Night and Miami Vice Night. My husband and I laughed thinking it was silly to be dressing to impress at a sausage fest, but we figured that the best man was trying to make it fun since it was such a small group of them. But my intuition was gnawing at me again. The afternoon they arrived at the villa was fine. Hubby sent me photos and a video walkthrough of his bedroom to show me the view of his balcony overlooking the ocean. We texted about a lot of work stuff. We have a business. But I could tell later that night that something was different just based on the change of tone of his text. I just figured that they were busy, didn't text him anymore, and tried not to read too much into it. The next morning, their first one there, my husband posted on his Instagram story a photo of a breakfast table at the villa. Nothing special, but it just had a pretty view of the pool and ocean background. Later that morning, I happened to look at the villa's Instagram and saw that they reposted a tagged video from a woman's story. It was of her and two other women eating breakfast, and she panned over the table and out to the view of the pool and ocean. I figured it was probably the people who stayed there at the villa before our husbands arrived, and the villa had just gotten around to reposting it. Until something caught my eye at the dining table. It was one of the decorations for the bachelor party. I saw the same thing in my husband's story too. I thought, that can't be right. But after quadruple checking, it was the same effing decoration that our husbands had set up specifically for the bachelor party. I then went to this woman's profile and looked at her other stories and saw that those women were actually there at the villa the night before, dressed up for the Black Light Night. We're partying at the villa and we're now having breakfast, meaning they effing stayed the night there. I admit that I stalked this woman's Instagram the majority of the day. One of her stories showed her and the women hanging out in the pool and all of our husbands in the background. Then she posted a photo of all of them sitting around the table gambling together. She was sitting right next to my husband. I was able to see one of the other women's stories as well, and she actually had her OF links in her bio, and I was able to see her X account with full X-rated stuff. I lost my effing mind. I immediately called my husband to confront him, and at first he tried to lie, until he realized that I actually knew and wasn't just trying to bait him for info. He said that he didn't know what to do. The best man said that he had a surprise after they arrived at the villa, and apparently it was these escorts staying there with them for the entire trip. My husband said that he planned to tell me when he got home, but figured if he told me while on the trip, I would tell the other wives, and he would have basically fried the other husbands there because it would have gone nuclear. I've never been so livid. How on earth would anyone think this is appropriate for strange women to be staying there? None of those men are single. The best man has put all of his friends in a position of being trapped at a secluded villa with escorts and nowhere else to go. And now they have to keep a secret and lie to their wives and fiancés so they aren't the rat of the friend group that outed everything. Am I overreacting, or is this absolutely insane for someone to think that this is appropriate? My instinct was right when I found out to tell the other wives, but I wasn't sure if they had given their stamp of approval on this, and I was just the clueless wife whose hubby never told her of the plans. My understanding now, based on conversations I've had with my husband since he got home, is that I'm the only wife that found out and knows about this. Do I tell the other wives? Do I risk hurting the marriages of my friends with the truth bomb? I feel like I'm part of the disrespectful, dirty secret by keeping this info from my friends.
Am I wrong for refusing to make my best friend's wedding dress, despite making them for the rest of our friendship group? Story time. So I am a dressmaker and I own my own shop. It has been a tradition amongst my friendship group that my wedding gift to them will always be a custom-made wedding dress made by me. They get to design the whole thing, choose the fabrics, we have multiple fittings, it's really cute and really fun. I absolutely love my job and I love my friends even more, so it has always been a really, really lovely job for me. However, this is where things get a little bit different this time. I'm currently 30 weeks pregnant, and as the weeks go on, obviously it's getting a lot more difficult. I'm trying to lower the burden I'm putting on myself and my baby. Can I just say, this Shiseido foundation is so beautiful. So my friend last night disclosed to me that she was going to be getting married. And of course, I was absolutely ecstatic. And she was like, I'm so glad I finally get my custom dress from you. I've waited so long. I was like, I know, I can't wait to make it for you. I said, just send me over what the wedding date will be and some designs that you like already. And then we can set up like a meeting to sign it all. To which she says to me, we already have a date. January 19th. Right. Okay. She says to me, do you think that'll be enough time? I'm like, yeah, a year and 5 months. That is absolutely plenty of time. We can do multiple fittings. It wasn't January 19th, 2026. It was January 19th, 2025. 5 months time. I'm popping a child out next month. I was shooketh, right? I told her, if that's the date you picked, I'm going to have to retract my promise to you. It's just not going to happen. But I very, very cheekily said, you know, if you do really want me to make your wedding dress, you might want to reconsider the date. And you know, I said 5 months isn't that long to plan a wedding anyway. Made it very, very obvious to her that I will not be making her dress if she's getting married in January. She just didn't understand this. And then went on to point out that I'll be taking time off soon. Her point was that I'd be taking time off and that I could just make her dress in that amount of time. No, not going on holiday, love. In this time, I did get a little bit snappy. To which you had every right. I was just like, girl, have you hit your head? I asked her why she thinks it's okay to put stress on me during my pregnancy just to make her wedding dress. She has now been calling me out. I look crazy right now. She has now been calling me out in the group chat saying that it's clear who her favourites are. I do get it. I'd be annoyed if my friend also couldn't include me in the tradition too. However, I do feel as though these circumstances are a little bit different. I don't know, maybe I could have made like a reception dress or, I don't know, like a cocktail dress to sort of ease the letdown.
Am I in the wrong for refusing to wear a skimpy maid outfit to an exclusive party my friend got invited to? So I, 22 female, live with my friend, 22 female, and she recently met a guy at a beach party. She's pretty much obsessed with him because he comes from a well-known, well-off family in the area and has a certain level of status associated with him. She told me that they were sort of dating, and obviously I've been supportive through it all, as a friend. However, I met him a few times and I don't exactly hold favorable opinions of him. I didn't tell my friend because I wasn't fully sure of my views yet and I didn't want to be negative. Anyway, he's throwing a party soon and invited my friend. He asked her to bring me along too. He said it was a themed party and that everyone would be assigned a character, style, / to wear. He sent my friend a picture of our outfits. 2 skimpy as hell maid costumes sprawled on a bed. I immediately told her that I wouldn't be wearing that shit and especially not to a party with a bunch of strangers. Initially, she thought I was kidding, but then understood that I'm serious. She said that wearing these fits isn't a big deal at all and that I need to stop being so prudish and serious. I told her that it's very humiliating that this guy thinks it's perfectly fine to request 2 women to wear this to a party. Like, you're seriously asking 2 girls who are clearly not as rich as you to dress up as maids to your party? I asked her if she seriously sees nothing wrong with it and she said no. She explained that he just has weird taste and that it might be a weird rich people thing. I told her again that I will not be wearing some skimpy ass maid costume. Not only is it embarrassing, it is especially disrespectful to me because I don't have any sort of meaningful relationship with the guy, and yet he thought it was appropriate to include me in this request. I told her that I won't be wearing those clothes, won't be going to the party, and will from now on avoid her new boyfriend altogether. We had a massive argument and she said that I'm lame, boring, and not a supportive friend. She said that instead of helping her, I'm ruining everything by being a killjoy. When she fed back to the guy that I'm refusing to participate, he even asked her if getting paid for it would change her mind. That made it even worse. Apparently he told her that I had the right attitude, which makes no sense as I've been combative all this time, and that his friends would love to get to know me. What the hell? I was pretty upset and told my dad about this situation. The party's tomorrow night and my friend decided to go alone, and she's not really talking to me right now. So, am I in the wrong?
Am I wrong for telling my parents the wrong time of my wedding? Story time. My parents are late for everything. By everything, I mean everything. Have always been disappointed many, many times. Graduation ceremonies, dance recitals, birthdays, even my dad's retirement dinner, he managed to still be late to. And the thing is, it is completely my mum's fault. This woman does not understand the theory of punctuality. At this point, we're all used to it and we're all sick of it. And my dad is past the point of caring now and trying to get her to be on time. I'm now getting married and my husband told me in no uncertain terms that if my mum was late to our wedding, he would never talk to her again. But he was witness to my mum and dad turning up half an hour late to my cousin's wedding, and I'm pretty sure he didn't want the same for me. As we are getting samples for our wedding invitations, I spoke to the printer and managed to get one of them printed with a different start time. Had it done with 1 hour earlier than they actually needed to be there. Apparently, on the day of the wedding, my mum was absolutely beside herself because she was convinced that she was going to be late for my wedding. You know, she was the mother of the bride, and she was actually going to be my ring bearer. When they got to the wedding and they saw other people just turning up and parking, she didn't think anything of it, she didn't question it. Anyway, the ceremony went off beautifully. The problem came last Sunday. My parents came over for a big family dinner. We didn't bother to start the barbecue before everyone showed up, especially my parents. And when she got there, she's like, why isn't everyone eating? And we were like, well, we knew we'd be sat waiting for you, so we didn't want the food to go cold. To which my mum replied, I'm not always late, I was on time for your wedding. They hadn't been on time at all. They arrived 45 minutes after the time I had put on their invitation. A couple of people that knew what we had done were giggling around the table, giving each other like side eye. And my mum very much picked up on this. And this is when I came clean about giving her a special invitation. And now my mum is angry at me because I made her look like a fool in front of everyone. Now my mum is pissed at me for not trusting her to be on time to my wedding and making a fool of her in front of everyone. If everyone around the table had just controlled themselves, we would have gotten away with that. But what do you think? Am I wrong?